All right, I'm going to do a quick little lesson on how to draw fur. And I am doing this cute little hamster guy. I loved the perspective of him. It cracked me up. So that was kind of what I was tackling here with my original sketch. So it's very important that when you are working with fur or hair that you are laying down your values first. So I can see that there is like a little bit of a darker value that happens in parts of the face, and we want to just get all of those values in at the beginning. So I'm going to use the techniques that we've talked about where I'm laying down the edge of my pencil and trying to use the most amount of graphite as I can to get those darker areas in. If you squint at your picture that you're working from and then squint at your drawing, you should be able to see matching values. You're going to look for the darkest areas first and then the lightest areas after that. So these first values that we're putting on are going to be very important. So I'm laying in some of the shadows that we see right under here where his little claws are. And it looks like he kind of has a little V-shaped of more of a medium value. Over here, it comes up close to his little eye. And again, I'm not coloring. I'm trying to lay down a smooth value using small ovals with my pencil. And I think over here, because the right side is in the shadow, everything is going to be just a little bit darker. So I'm going to go ahead and get all these values in, and then we're going to talk about the adding the fur. All right, so now I've gotten kind of the basic values on for most of this little guy. I'm going to hold it up so you can see a little bit closer. At this point, probably I did all of the values with my pencil, but you may find that using a blending stump will help. And if you do not have a blending stump at home, you can use the end of some rolled paper towel. And it's going to do the same thing where you're able to push that with your finger. You can also just use your finger, which I'm a big fan of. But you can see the difference in after I have blended the graphite that a lot of those little lines go away. I, however, like to keep a lot of those lines because otherwise I feel like this looks too artificial. A lot of people can try to do too much of the work with the blending stump and they lose out on learning the techniques of blending with your pencil first. But for the point of this, I am going to go through and just kind of smooth out a lot of these areas with my makeshift blending stump. Okay. So once that is all smoothed out, the most important thing to remember is contrast. You want to have light lights and dark darks next to each other, and that's what makes that fur look like fur. So that's what we are going to work on, and I'm going to see if I can move this guy a little closer so you can see that detail. All right, hopefully we will not have any problems with that trying to adjust its focus on here. But we are, now that we have those basic values, let's see if we can scoot this over, get both of those on there at the same time. It'll work. It'll just be a light reflection, I guess. Okay. This is when we start looking at the direction of the fur and trying to draw that on here as well. So in the same way that we created eyelashes, we are going to start making fur that follows the same direction that we're already seeing. Okay. I'm going to make sure we've got defined lines, and I think I had kind of smushed up here a little bit and misconstrued where the top of his head was. So you also want to pay attention to whether or not you can see on the picture the tops of the hairs. And most of the time you can, especially over like in an area like this. Now it's very important as you're making these little marks. Let me see, we'll do it over here where you can be able to see this. You're making these little marks that you are not starting and having them evenly spaced and all be in one line. You are going to want to kind of up and down group these. They tend to look a little bit more natural once they are like that. So they need to start in different places, just like they would on our head or on the actual animal. So we get to see quite a bit of this fur, even up on the ear. This is the kind of the top of his ear here. And we want to be laying in that hair. And this is just sort of our first starting point. I'm going to get a little bit of this value in here darker. And I think this probably needs to be a little bit darker as well, value wise. So I'm going to go and be adding the hair. Like I said, you want to start in different places and pay attention to where these naturally are coming. Just because I'm going up and down right now doesn't mean that once I get over here that I'm going to be going up and down, because all of the hair around his little nose is going to be like these little whiskers, and it's going to start taking on multiple directions. Okay, so it helps if you have a very sharp pencil at this point, because you're able to get the fine detail in there. Okay. Now, hopefully you can see a difference from this side to this side. But what I usually will recommend is that you pull out some highlights with your eraser. And if you can get a fine line with the corner of like a brand new eraser, that looks really good, because we've talked about that contrast makes everything stand out more. All right, now this little eye gets hidden over here. It looks like probably about right here is where we're going to start to notice this little change in the direction of the fur. So like I said, you want to make sure that they're not all just starting and stopping in the same place. You're going to start and stop in different places. And if it's fuzzy, you're just going to make it close together. So far away, you should see, hey, that looks like it's going to be fuzzy. And then up close, you get to see a little bit more of that design. But again, the layering is what's most important. Lay down all your value first, so it's already shaded, and then you're adding the texture on top of everything. Looks like I forgot to shade over here. Okay, I can use my pinky, or I can use my paper towel. And then I can see that the hair starts to move, because it's going to start going over to this other side of the face. Okay, and I'm adding in. So anywhere where you know it's going to be really well seen, add a lot of detail. Make sure we're seeing those little hairs pop off the top. Anywhere like that, it's going to be important. Okay. At some point, you may decide, you know what, that's looking a little bit intense, and you can still soften up the fur with your finger or your blending stump, and then go back and pull out the highlights with your eraser, and you should see those parts starting to appear. Okay. Once you've smoothed things down and look at all those little lines that I made, I'm going to go back with my really sharp pencil and put a couple lines back in there. And it helps everything kind of stand out. So start with layering of value, blend everything, and then come back in with your detail with a sharp pencil and a sharp eraser, and get that contrast in there. And that should help you make successful fur or hair or whatever it is that you're drawing that has those kinds of textures.